Welcome to the Aligned Ambition Show, where we share women's entrepreneurial wisdom. Are you a woman starting or growing your online heart-centered business? Are you wanting to do things differently? Do you feel icky about using manipulative marketing tactics and are ready to align your business with your ethics, values, and life goals? If this sounds like you, then stick around for this conversation.
We're the dreamers, the believers, breaking through the mold, building up our visions with a purpose brave and bold.
All right, well, welcome to the Aligned Ambitions Show. I'm Larissa Russell, your host, and today I have with me Suhaiba. Suhaiba is an author, consultant, certified behavioral assessment specialist. Suhaiba Neill, I apologize. Her book, Like a Girl, 22 Leadership Lessons for Women on the Rise, is based on her own experience of growing up with all brothers and working in 3 male-dominated industries over the past 25 years. So I think she's right on topic with us today, and she shares her lessons to encourage and empower other women on the rise to live authentically based on their own personal definitions of leadership. Absolutely love that. And Suhaiba, welcome. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm excited to have a conversation with you because, yes, I only had one brother who was gay, so it really didn't count. He was more girl than I was, but,
There you go.
but it absolutely changes things. Having worked in the oil and gas industry for so long, that whole male culture, it's so different. It's so different.
Yeah. So, and I tease, it's literally the story of my life. I have 2 older brothers and 1 younger brother, so I got to endure all of it.
Oh, absolutely.
From both ends, but we're all still really close. And I like to say it definitely made me much tougher than I would have been had I not had them in my life. And so I'm grateful for that part of it, at least.
Yes. I have to say that's the one thing about working in oil and gas for as many years as I did, that I'm not really a whiner. You don't have any time for that. It's like, just do the thing. I moved into the beauty industry after oil and gas crashed in like 2008 into the beauty industry. And it was a totally different environment. Was not a fan of that environment myself. But anyways, I digress. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up doing what you do?
Yeah, and what I discovered from the happy accident of writing a book on leadership for women is now I have this huge group of female friends that I'd never had in my life previously. But we're all in our mid to late 40s or older, so we all passed the competitive phase of life, and it's all about collaboration and celebration and encouraging everyone to reach their full potential. So wasn't really my intention when I set out to have my own business. Second generation in a family-owned business that my father started 50 years ago, actually. So residential painting, suburbs of Philadelphia, a very affluent area of the country, and came on board 20 years ago after working in men's college basketball and then the NBA with the Philadelphia 76ers. That was my dream job. I got my dream job right out of college. So that was a lot of fun, but not conducive to being married and having a baby. So shifted gears, joined the family business, and then we grew and things got kind of crazy and chaotic. And I didn't realize this at the time, but systems and processes are kind of my specialty. So I created a lot of systems and processes for myself for the things that I had to do. I teased like the first year when I had to pull all the tax information for the accountant, I had no idea what that entailed. So I made a checklist at the end of the year so that the next year I wouldn't have to like try to remember all these 10 things he needs, because especially for something you only do once a year, you got to make a checklist and just go open it up when you need it and, add to it as needed. So first couple years in the business, I created systems and processes for everything I was responsible for so that I didn't have the stress of like trying to remember everything. And everybody that knows that runs their own business, especially if you're in a service industry, there's like a million moving parts at all times. And then from there, I branched out and created systems and processes for everything else. And that's where the full circle business was born, which is why consultant, like I said, was never part of my plan to have my own business. More of a behind the scenes gal, although not anymore. I had a lot of friends in the industry who I talked about what I did with, and they're like, yeah, you need to share that with the rest of us so that we don't have to struggle over here in silence while you've got it all figured out. So that was the beginning of my consulting business, which of all things launched in 2020. I was supposed to hit go. I had my first paying client in January of 2020 because he didn't want to wait. And then I was supposed to hit go, with everybody in March. And then something happened in March. So we delayed until July, but also again realized like there's no such thing as the perfect time to start anything. So when you have it together, you just have to go for it. So started officially in July of 2020, and then have been working with other contractors over the years to help them add systems and processes to their companies to kind of my goal is to go from stressed to streamlined. And I think people can appreciate that. So figured out what my gift is, but the most important part of figuring out what your gift is then actually sharing it with the world, which was a little scary, but took the leap. And so here we are.
And that is such an important part, the sharing it with the world.
Yeah.
It's great to know what your what your thing is, but if you don't share it, then it's kind of like, just sort of dead sitting
Mm,
there. And
yeah.
systems and processes, that's always been me as well. You rise through the ranks very quickly when you know how to do these things and make things easier for other people. If I could streamline it, I would streamline it. And so I absolutely love that. So
One of the
from
things
all of that, well, sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was
Yep.
going to say one of the things I discovered too is that most business owners aren't hardwired for systems and processes. So I'm second generation. So my dad is not a system process guy at all. And that was one of the things too that I realized is most business owners, they're not good at it and they don't know where to start. And it's very frustrating. So to have someone say, hey, I can get you 80% there and then let's tweak it together to get to 100% for you and your business and how you operate was really something that was needed in the industry. So yeah, you have to share your gift. Otherwise it kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. And also a good point about, as business owners, we just want to share our passion. And so those systems and processes, the business, how to run a business, all of those things, that's a steep learning curve when you just want to share your passion. And so you can really get bogged down. So having somebody else that can help walk you through that. I find that with our business mastermind, they just want to share their passion. They don't, they don't want to do all the things. So we do all the things together, right? We do a lot of live sessions to do that. And from doing that consulting and, working in with a lot of men, it sounds like, how did you end up then writing Like a Girl?
So as you can see from behind me, I'm a very avid reader and I've been writing probably forever, as long as I've been able to. And probably 2009, I took a class, actually, believe it or not, on writing for children, and ended up with my teacher becoming my mentor and then a really good friend. And she always encouraged me to tell my story. So she was a nonfiction author, and she always encouraged. I write really silly rhyming children's books, none of which are published yet because the traditional route's a little tricky, and I'm still working on that. But she always encouraged us to write our own story, and so I guess a couple of years ago now, I was at a conference and it kind of just came to me to finish this. So I started it. I actually have kind of two stories. Like a Girl is the story, is a leadership journey about the lessons I've learned over the years as a woman in all male dominated spaces up until recently. So it came to me like, you need to finish this. And it was at the time when my daughter was getting ready to head off to college. And I realized that I wanted her journey into leadership to be a little smoother than mine was if possible. Sometimes your kids listen to you, sometimes they don't, but I'm like, hey, at least it's there. So put my head down, finished the book, and then again was like nervous about hitting send to my editor and publishing company. But I did it, and then on the other side of it, discovered how many people were grateful that I had told my story. Um, and a lot of women, like I said, my age and older, were like, I wish I had this in my 20s and my 30s. So it was kind of a gift to her and a reminder to myself of how much I'd really learned over the years. So it starts with me being 4 in gymnastics. And the first chapter is Be Fearless because I was not afraid of anything because I have brothers. And I was tiny, so I was perfect for gymnastics. And I couldn't wait to get big enough to do the other things like that the bigger girls were doing. I'm like, forget this little like low beam. I'm like, I want to get on the high beam. I want to get on the uneven bars. And, so that's the beginning. And I literally just took a look back through my life
Mhm.
And you don't realize they're lessons as you're learning them. But then I got to like 45 and realized, oh, they're the lessons. And if I can consolidate them and share them, then maybe they'll be helpful to the next generation of up and coming young women leaders that we're going to desperately need.
Yes, absolutely desperately need. That's one of the things I think we're really lacking in the world we live in, right? The patriarchal system is not kind to women, and then we have to shift things. But if we could move more into our own empowerment, right? Because women are, and not just women and men, but the energy of the feminine and the feminine masculine is, you know, more collaboration, more creativity, more intuition, more let's work together. We can all do this. Let's lift each other up. Whereas the masculine energy of patriarchy is very much about power over, and that's a real problem for a lot of women. So empowering women to step into those leadership roles is really important, I think. And I love that, that's a part of what you do, recognizing the differences. Yeah.
And I realized as I was writing the book too that my personal definition of leadership was off. So, like, if you said leader to me, I think Napoleon for some reason. Maybe it's
Hmm.
because my dad's a history teacher. I don't know, but I think of like this dominant guy that's just like insistent on being in charge. And what I realized is that we all have the capacity to be leaders, and it really starts with your personal definition and being a leader of your own life and making your own decisions and choices that align with who you are authentically. So that was the goal with me. And I feel like subconsciously as women, if you grow up and you get married and you have kids, like you kind of ebb and flow through life
Hmm.
and kind of lose yourself a little bit and then find yourself again. I know that was kind of my journey with, got married young and had stepkids right away, which were fabulous and, no complaints. However, it's a different role, and so you kind of become a wife and you become a stepmom. Then I had my daughter and became a mother, and you kind of all of our lives were like taught to put ourselves at the bottom of the list instead of at the top of the list. So just really, like I said, again, making that shift that being your authentic self is the absolute best thing you can do to live the life that you were intended to live, and that to really requires courage. And when someone else stands up and shows you that they can do it, then that hopefully will give you the courage to do it as well. And that's my goal with starting with the younger generation and speaking in high schools and colleges now to young women that are starting their journey into like the quote unquote real world and the workforce to get really clear about who you are and then be able to hold fast to that as you move through the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is important, but even, carrying it forward. I mean, yes, let's get them when they're young. But I noticed with my own daughters, like they were raised in a fairly what would be considered a progressive home. And, you know, we didn't believe in gender roles and certain jobs for certain people and all of those things. And yet, very much so, my one daughter in particular, when she got married, she took on all of that,
Mm.
and it wasn't until like 10 years into her marriage that she went, wait a second, I can't keep doing all the things. And it's like, and we had a conversation a few years ago about like, you were never raised like that. Why did you? And she's like, because all my friends were doing that and all the, that's what we're told. And she said, I'm exhausted. I'm like, yes, you're exhausted. And yeah. And so then switching back, I mean, she had a good foundation when
Right.
you're coming from, that's the way you were raised. And then that's how you move into it is it's a little steeper climb to get out of it, but absolutely can. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the outside influence I think is real. It's interesting for me. I loved science. So I was a bio major in college, and I didn't know that girls in STEM was a thing, like that there was an issue because my mom's like a math and science person and was always like, you can do whatever you want to do as long as you're willing to put in the work. So, I decided I wanted to go. Actually, I was originally planning on to going into veterinary medicine, and I tease that I changed my mind, but not my major by junior year. So I still have a degree in biology. But no one ever told me that, oh no, girls don't go into biology or girls aren't, science isn't for women. And so what you see, and unfortunately, like I said, the outside world can influence in a way that was not intended, because it's just the majority. And again, that's the goal, is going back to self and who am I authentically and how do I lead in a way that feels correct for me, and then use that courage to encourage someone else to do the same. One of the ladies in my network has a shirt that says collaboration over competition. So that there's this other thing where, like, in your 20s and 30s, usually women feel like they have to compete with each other because there aren't very many of us in the room usually. And again, that's like a disservice to the fact that if we work together, how much better could we all be? And all the stats show that the more women you have in the room, and as you move up the food chain and higher into like the hierarchy of a company, the better the whole company performs. So the stats are horrible about women in leadership, but the facts are really positive, and so shining a light on that as well. And I always tease, like, when I started in the painting company, I was probably the youngest in the room when I went to conferences with my dad, and I was most of the time I was the only woman in the room, and so talk about intimidating. But again, like, three brothers, I'm like, I can hold my own. That wasn't the whole story of my life, was like keeping up with the brothers. Um, and it can be really hard to be first or to be the only one, which is where I always talk about finding community. Like, if you're the only one, find another woman that's the only one and kind of team up and become accountability buddies and build a community outside of work that gives you the support you need. So, because somebody has to go first,
Yeah.
in order to kind of pave the path for the rest of us to follow. But it's definitely not easy.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It isn't, but it's also very fulfilling, right? When you do something that somebody else hasn't done, and when you show up in a room and you hold your own, those sort of things can be so fulfilling. But yes, not easy. You're absolutely right. And so being brave enough to take that step and do those things because it feels true to you is such an important part. Yeah, absolutely. And so your book 22, your number was
Called
20.
Like a Girl, actually.
Yeah.
So when I was little, that's the thing I heard. A very, very big sports fan and sports family. So I played all the sports. And with the brothers, it was always don't do it like a girl. So I had to learn how to play things properly. Throw a football, shoot a foul shot without jumping. So the title of the book is Like a Girl, and it's 22 leadership lessons for women on the rise. So 22, short and sweet. There's some exercises at the back to kind of like see where you are with regards to each of the lessons and what you might want to work on now and what you might want to work on next. Because I think it's women on the rise, because I feel like we should always be in continuous evolution. And no matter what age and stage of life you're in, there's always room for kind of some growth and some improvement. So yes, short, sweet, to the point, one lesson, one story, and then a little takeaway as to how to kind of put it to use in the real world. And I think that's probably the best compliment I've gotten so far on the book, is people saying it's relatable. So I've got a lot of books back there. There's a shelf of business books on them. I will admit to you that I have not read all of them cover to cover, because they're 250 pages just for the sake of being 250 pages. And,
Yes.
it's like 10 examples, when if you have a brain, I think one or two will do. So yeah, my goal was, and again, like I said, with the training and writing for children, as simple as possible is always my mission with everything, is to keep it simple and relatable and easy to use.
Yes. And I love that. Like a girl, I remember that as when I was younger, and even my own brother, who's more like a girl than I am, would say
Yeah.
things like that. And more recently, now I'm old, so it might be in the last 20 years, but more recently there was a commercial on, about like a girl, and
Yeah.
and she was killing it at everything. And so it's like, yeah, because girls are amazing, and
Yeah.
so they can do anything. So yeah, I love that. I love that. I noticed that you have a free offering for our audience as a free workbook on how to turn a dream into a goal and then create an action plan to make it a reality. And I'll put the
Yes.
link below. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and that goes back to two things. One, like I said, launching the business, and two, writing the book, and really figuring out what your gift is and then sharing it with the world. I think a lot of us in ITs and like a couple workshops I've done with women of, 30s plus, I said, we all have a dream. And sometimes we think it's silly, but it's not. It's yours for a reason. But your goal and your job is also to dive a little deeper, find the why behind it, and then turn it into reality. And then when I say share it with the world, it could be the entire universe, or it could be a small subset, of the population that it makes sense for, but you need to share it and not keep it to yourself. So again, systems and processes and consistency are kind of my superpowers. So it's a quick worksheet to figure out what your dream is, what's the why behind it, and then how we're going to make a game plan to make it a reality. Because I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. You get started, but then you never finish. So the goal here is to finish it. And then once you're done, figure out what to do with it so that you can share it with the rest of us, and help us with things that's like the craziest thing. Sometimes figuring out what your gift is tricky. And I always tell people, if you're not sure, ask a few of your really close friends or family members, and they'll tell you in a heartbeat, oh, you're really good at this, this, and this, so other people see it, but you don't always see it because it's easy to you. So like for me, my brain, the world is a puzzle. And they're like, okay, how do I put these pieces together? And realize like not everybody's brain works like that. So
Yes.
it didn't
Yeah.
occur to me that, oh, somebody else might struggle with this and they could use the help. So figuring out whatever that little dream is, it's yours for a reason. It's your responsibility to kind of get to the why. Like I said, for me with the book, my first why was my daughter. But then I'm like, what about everybody else's daughter? And what about all the other sisters and all the other women? So then that was like, take a deep breath and hit yes on the publish button and share it with everyone else. So the goal is to help you break it into smaller subsets and then be consistent with getting to the finish line.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really important that, as we talked at the beginning, the sharing part. And it doesn't mean you have to go and start a business but you need to share that with your community, with the people with somebody past that, so somebody knows somebody. It doesn't have to become a whole business that you build around that. But sharing is such an important part. Yeah. Yeah. I say that about art often. We do a lot of creative processes in our business mastermind and other things that we do, and share it, because when we share sort of the, I don't want to say the ugly beginnings, but we're not all Instagram influencers, and we have to start somewhere. And, if we're going through a process, we can share that process with someone, and yeah, and then our gifts as well.
Yeah, and I think that makes it more real. So, like, I did a presentation the other day with the assessment work that I do, and that was something that I added to the mix because I was really interested in, for me, to define leadership for myself, and then I needed to know myself as well as possible. So I like tease, I took all the assessments, back in like 2016, 2017, and then got interested in learning more. So I got certified. There was a typo in my presentation, and like, if you know the world of DISC, the high C in the group caught it. Because that's what us high C's do. And I'm like, okay, the high C in me is going to cringe later when we're not on camera, and I'll fix it before the next one. But like, we're human. We're going to make mistakes. Nothing's like they say, like the crappy first draft. But if you don't write crappy first draft, you can't get to the final version. So you have to start in order to finish. And, the learning that happens along the way is really where all the magic is, and stepping out of your comfort zone and trying something new and, pushing yourself. That's where the growth is.
Yeah. Yeah. Stepping out of your comfort zone. Get comfortable with the uncomfortable is what I say often. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Is there any final thoughts before we start to wrap up? Anything we haven't covered that you want to get in there?
The only thing I try to do myself and remind other women to do periodically as well is like just check back in, because it's easy sometimes to get off track and not realize that you're off track with regards to like self-care and, being authentic. And again, that's my goal in everything I do, is I want to show up as me. Like, everybody has a bad day or an off day, but 99% of the time it's too tiring to not be yourself.
Yes.
It's just like, and it's not serving anyone, to not be yourself. So every once in a while, make sure you're taking that time to check back in and say like, hey, am I on track with, where I wanted to be and what I wanted to be doing and how I wanted to be feeling. And if not, the thing that I talk about a lot in like that whole transformation and like the growth process is the grace. And we're so hard on ourselves sometimes, and you don't give yourself enough grace when you kind of hit a hurdle or you don't quite get the goal done by the deadline you wanted it to be done by. So my book came out later than I intended for it to come out, but it came out on my daughter's birthday, which is exactly when it was supposed to come out because it was her gift. So, and then Amazon went and goofed something up and moved the date by one day, and now it's my mom's birthday. So it's still, it's a thank you. So we have these ideas in our head, and we get so stuck on them that we forget sometimes. Check in, give yourself grace in those low moments, and then kind of recalibrate and keep moving forward.
Yes. It is. I also, I call it the cha-cha of life, because we take a step forward and we take a step back and 2 steps forward and a step back. And it's going to be, but if we don't keep moving, right, we just have to keep moving. We have to do that. And where can everyone find you? I do have your links listed below, but just so that you can let people know.
So I'm everywhere to make it easy for everyone. So on LinkedIn, it's just, you can find me under my name, Suhaiba Neill. On Facebook, personal page, but I think it's public at this point maybe. And I do have a page for the Full Circle Business if you need systems and process help. I do have a page for Like a Girl if you're looking for leadership posts geared towards women. You can hop over to my website. So the website for the leadership stuff and for the assessments is Like a Girl and then the number 22.com. So likeagirl22.com will take you there. And if you're interested in the book, you can get it there. If you buy it there, instead of Amazon, my publisher and my printer and I all do a little better, and Amazon doesn't take a big chunk of it. So I am always up for supporting other small businesses.
Yes.
And I am with a small publisher out of Massachusetts. So, and it's female owned. So I'm always happy to support other women owned businesses when I can as well. And then, like I said, once you're on my website or anywhere you are, you can email me or send me a message. My favorite thing to be is helpful. So if there's a way I can be helpful, then I'm always here to add to whatever questions you have, answer them, and hopefully help you get a little further down the road.
I love that. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Are you a woman interested in aligning your heart-centered business with your ethics, values, and life goals? Join our Aligned Business Building Mastermind for accountability, like-minded women who become your business colleagues to share your journey with, resources and trainings, and so much more. Join us for 1 month free using the link below. Thank you, and we'll see you next time on the Aligned Ambitions Show.